Welcome to Landlord Diaries, where we talk about midterm rentals and the opportunities behind them. We'll share landlord stories, talk about maximizing investment potential, and discuss how to live the very best landlord life. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Furnished Finder, the place for everything midterm rentals. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
It's your team on the Landlord Diaries. Kelly Bailey here in the Austin, Texas and surrounding areas with my co-host.
Hey everyone. I'm Katie, member of the Furnished Finder team and midterm rental landlord. Kelly and I today get to talk to Teresa, who is in Florida, and she has a handful of properties, one of which is right next door to her. So she has got all sorts of tips and tricks up her sleeve, and she is like the ultimate host. She takes the idea of really being a host and showing your travelers what that means to the next level. And we get so much good information from her story. So I encourage you all to listen, take notes. This is one you're going to want to take notes on, guys. And as a reminder, this episode and every episode are brought to you by Furnished Finder. So there are more travelers than ever looking for midterm rentals, and Furnished Finder is the home for everything midterm rental. So listing your property is only $99 a year. You get unlimited leads, and we have endless resources for landlords on the website. So make sure you check it out and enjoy this week's episode. Thanks, everyone.
Today, we talk with Theresa Barton in Longwood, Florida, which is just a little north of Orlando. Teresa lost her son in 2016 and found home remodeling to be a very therapeutic process, leading to improved financial and emotional health. This is Teresa's fourth or fifth year as a Furnished Finder host, and she has many great landlording tips to share with us today. Teresa, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for the invite. This is a lot of fun.
Yes, I'm excited for our guests to just get to hear all your fun tips. So we'll jump into the first question, which is, why don't you start by telling us about your properties, your midterm rental portfolio, and why you chose to pursue midterm rentals with your properties?
Okay, so we started all together about 6 years ago. We have this property, which is a single family home split into a 3-2 and a guest suite under one roof, big house. And then I arbitraged a lake property in a city not far from me called Castleberry. So we had 3 units operating for quite some time. When COVID hit and I knew something was going to happen with the short-term rental, I made the decision to let the arbitrage property go and started looking for ways that we could be all right financially and get guests that were not going to be impacted by like vacation travel. They needed to travel for work. So that's how I found Furnished Finder.
Excellent. And we already kind of gave everyone an introduction that you have a special story that can encourage others. So why don't you tell us how it was going through such a difficult time in your life and how real estate kind of was impacted as part of that journey?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that because I think looking back, I didn't even know what I was doing. And now that I know what I did, I want people to consider it for them. We lost our son in May of 2016, and it was beyond traumatic. And the opportunity to purchase this house, which is actually insanely convenient, it is next door to our home, came up, and we were able to purchase it. And at first, honestly, we weren't exactly sure what we were going to do. But the reason why it was helpful was when you are in deep grief, sleep is unobtainable. You cannot sleep. So it's a lot easier to caulk and paint and drywall mud and fix light fixtures and clean stoves at 2:00 in the morning next door, where my whole family is not worried about where I am at 2:00 in the morning, than keeping everyone awake in the house. So it became my absolute grief therapy for a very long time.
That's beautiful.
I'm so sorry to hear that you had to go through such a painful event. That is heartbreaking, but at the same time, so very thankful that you found something that was able to provide you with a little bit of relief. Mm-hmm. And like you said, something you could do safely, where your family felt, that you were doing something purposeful in a safe and close by environment. So I think that's a really good way to kind of use those emotions and use them to heal yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there's no place to put all that energy, all that trauma, all that frustration. And this was the best thing. I mean, there's nothing like breaking tile. There is nothing like breaking tile. Get rid of anger and fury.
Does your family come from a history of real estate or construction or anything like that? Or is that just something that kind of piqued your interest and you kind of dove in?
We do. My husband and I have been high school sweethearts from Key West since 1979. And every house we ever bought had a lot of problems on purpose. That way it allowed us to buy bigger houses with nicer land, terrible houses as far as everything but the bones. So we did that over and over again. And it's actually, for me, drywall and bust and tile is as therapeutic as it gets. I'm sure other people go to therapy. I go to Home Depot.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I think that's an encouragement for a lot of people. And Katie, unless you've got something more to add as an kind of just a get to know Teresa question, I'm excited to jump into all of these excellent tips that Teresa has in the landlord logistics section. So any last things before we transition?
No, let's do it.
Okay, let's have some fun, guys. I was shocked by everything Teresa just shared in our intro call and excited to pass those on to you. So first off, most of you know how important it is to Furnished Finder that we educate both landlords and travelers on how to avoid scams and travel safe. So Teresa has some fun, helpful tips that she utilizes. And I think it's 5 ways that landlords can convince a traveler they are not that they're not talking to a scammer. So Teresa, what are those that you use in your area?
So I start out with the county. This happens to be Seminole County, Florida. And I tell them to look up the property by my name, and they'll see that I'm the owner. So that's kind of the first piece. The second one is I do have it listed in many other platforms. And if they want to go look at it there, it would be pretty hard to fake it in that many places. Then with some people, I will ask them if they would like me to do a little FaceTime and walk around the yard. Because if I have guests inside, I'm not going to bother them. However, I have found the Furnished Finders crowd are very different than the short-term rental crowd. And most of them tell me, no, if you want us to show it to somebody, if they want to, especially during the time when we were doing almost all nurses. My sister happens to be a hospice nurse, and I was paranoid about how they were traveling in unsafe environments and not staying in safe places. And I didn't want that. So anytime we got a call from a nurse, I tried very hard to make it work. And so a lot of the Furnished Finder guests are perfectly happy for me to pop in, introduce them just by first name on a little face chat, and then the other person knows. So each layer of that would make someone feel better that there is no scamming. One of the things I do for money is if they're going to pay me on Cash App or Venmo, they only can send me $1 first. I don't want to take any chances that it goes to the wrong account. So they send me $1 and then I reply back. And let's see, there was something else. What was the other one, Kelly? There was another.
Give the fun fact about Google Earth.
Oh, sure. So you can look down at Google Earth and you can see in our backyard, you can see physical things because Google Earth is changing constantly. It's amazing how often. So I can describe to them, let's see, right now there's blue chairs and a green umbrella. And Google Earth is constantly updating. So it's usually dead accurate.
I love that. And then the last thing that intrigued me is if you look at Teresa's listing on Furnished Finder, she puts her rental number, but she's not a real estate agent. So why do you choose to embrace that rental number and I think you register it with the county. Is that correct?
It is. I do have to correct something. I just did get my realtor's license in December. I don't think I told you that.
Congratulations.
I'm not using it for this. But anyway, so just to correct. So the reason why is I am a proponent of operating short-term and mid-term rentals completely legally. I think the reason why the business is in so much trouble is people playing halfway legal. I won't do that because first of all, I don't want the panic to worry about it down the road. And second, I want to be part of the folks that make communities like short-term and midterm rentals, not hate them. So I do everything by the book. The funny story is I went to a county commission meeting about this, and they were bringing up the statistics for our little county, and there were 3 properties properly registered. 2 of them were mine. And
wow.
That's
it.
To be fair, it was very hard. It's a gauntlet to figure out how to get through all the county, city, state, and then they add new stuff. Seminole County recently added something. I think it's so they can collect $250 a year per property, which I think is fair. I had to have a certain kind of fire extinguisher, and I had to have a landline. That was their new requirement. And that was
landline.
Honestly,
interesting.
Fairly reasonable. I don't think that's unreasonable to ask. So I try to make sure that I'm constantly aware of the changes. And no matter what we have, we're dead legal. Also, because quite frankly, if you're not, and you have an insurance claim, you are giving your insurance company an opportunity to not pay that claim. If you don't operate legally, they look for any reason not to pay claims. And that's one of them.
Yeah, we're going to jump into the insurance talk later.
Yeah, for all the listeners to remember that every city, every state, every county will have different requirements. And if you don't know them, sometimes it can be really overwhelming to try to navigate the legal talk and language that might be on a city, state, or county website. Reach out to a real estate professional in the area. Even if you are not using that person, if you can establish a relationship and let them know that you might use their service in the future, or you were referred to them or whatnot, those people are people of service and they want you to do it right also. So it's something that they more than likely already know. So reach out to them and get the insights.
There's so many places. There's building codes, there's fire codes, there's city regs, county regs. Then there's even jurisdiction.
And they're just all so different. We have properties in... we have properties in 4 different areas, and they're all different.
Yeah.
And it is so frustrating because I want to add it as a part of my process and just say, okay, when this happens, I do this. And I can't do that. It's not.
And staying current for the changes too. So I pay a lot of attention to what's going on with the county commissioners. And when they're talking, whenever I see Airbnb or short-term rental is the conversation, I pick up my ear and I pay attention in case they're trying to change something, A, because I want to have an input on it, and B, because if they change something, I got to play by those new rules.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the other aspects, I didn't want to put it in the introduction, but we all know there's a lot of talk right now about as short-term rental regulations increase and midterm rentals gain traction and promotion, then we've got a market that might become oversaturated depending on which market you're in. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that we hear often is, why is my property not getting any leads? And a lot of it comes down to your marketing. So that's some of the things we're going to talk about on this episode is ways that Teresa has taken her properties and kind of set herself apart in different aspects. And so I want to jump into one of the biggest ways that is, not always welcomed for hosts is being pet friendly. So Teresa is an advocate for hosts having pet friendly properties. And I wanted her to give you the opportunity to explain why that is, Teresa.
So first of all, my experience of the whole time I've been using the Furnished Finder was one gal who just got too young of a puppy and she was working too long of a shift. Other than that, every single guest who's brought pets has been phenomenal. For example, I have a lady who came with 2 big, beautiful golden retrievers. The first thing she did when she walked in, she rented the main house. We're sitting right now in the guest suite, but she rented the main house. She walked in and put sheets on every single one of my upholstered furniture. She said, my dogs aren't supposed to get up on the chairs, but just in case they do, I don't want you having to deal with gold hair. I'm like, dang, you are the bomb. And that was my experience.
And Golden's shed a lot.
Yeah, right.
So that's nice.
And it was over and over and over again that was my experience. I don't find people traveling with pets bad travelers. As a matter of fact, I think they're the opposite. I think they're beyond conscientious. They have to plan. It's Florida. You cannot leave a pet in the car for even a minute. So they have to think about what hotel they're going to stay at. They have to spend money. I think they are absolutely fabulous, conscientious guests. That's been my experience. And I think it draws, quite frankly, the people I want to enjoy our property. We live next door. I want them to enjoy our property and be lovely people.
I will also add that we have found that a lot of landlords that we speak with have found that it really opens up the number of people that they can rent to. Mm-hmm. And that also just by having a decent pet deposit required, it covers a lot of your risk for damage, right? And having those clauses in your lease, a lot of times we hear that people don't allow pets because they're afraid of damage. Right. There are ways to protect yourself, right? A good clause in a lease covers you. Pictures of before the property covers you. So there's ways that you can do that in a very, ethical and professional way that are totally doable.
Yep. I've been hosting for about 2 to 3 years on Furnished Finder, and we have 5 houses, and they're all pet friendly. And I would say probably 70 to 80% of our guests come with pets. And we've given back 100% of the deposit so far. And things that we could have charged for, it wasn't for the pets. It was for, things going missing or just not having a good inventory, with 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, things like that. So I would encourage you, for those that are struggling in their market, that's one of the things you can do is analyze, can I be pet friendly? If you're already pet friendly, can I adjust my pet fee or make it a refundable deposit rather than a fee that they're going to lose? Mm-hmm. That's what we do is we just say, hey, we've got $1,000 deposit. I'm not going to charge you any extra for your pet, but just remember it's $1,000. So just make sure and take care of everything. And then we've been able to give that deposit back 100% of the time so far. I just want to add one more section while we're talking about things that you can be adjust. Keep in mind your overall deposit as well. If you've gone years without having to use your deposit, then maybe think about in a tough market dropping it from $2,500 to $1,000 or $1,000 to $500. Like adjust your numbers, adjust your pricing, adjust things as needed that are flexible that you haven't even had to tap into in the years that you've been doing it. So that's just some tidbits.
And I think, Kelly, with that, property to property, because your properties are a lot larger than my midterm rentals.
Yep.
My midterm rental, the deposit's like $300.
Wow. Right. Exactly.
It's a condo, right? So know your property, know your market, and know, are you taking a family? Are you taking a single nurse? Like, what are you taking and what's reasonable for them? Because that is a really good way.
Right. I have 2 more little points for pets. If you do pets, buy as many Roomba vacuums on Facebook for $25 or $30 because they're for sale all the time. And what's wrong with them is a dead battery, which is $19.95 on Amazon. And when the cleaners get done, I put 3 Roombas in the house and let it go to see if it can just find a few more little hairs. Doesn't take me any time. It's while I'm checking supplies, and then I take them back home and recharge them. And they're inexpensive because people don't know that they're just batteries pooped out. So that's my little trick to make sure that there's not a hair left in the house.
I also like to put googly eyes on the robots and watch them compete.
That I haven't done.
If anyone's wondering what it's like to live in my house.
That's a fun mom right there.
There you go.
So before we leave the pet conversation, last thing, Teresa, I think you allow cats and dogs. So what are some ways that you vet those pet owners for our nervous landlords to make sure you get quality pet owners every time?
So first of all, I definitely have a phone conversation with them, 1 or 2 or 3. And I tell me everything about your pet. And then I have a very long explanation of what a good pet is here. And I say things like calm, sweet, not aggressive, not scared of lightning and thunder in Florida, because that's a whole problem here. It's a constant. Mm-hmm. That they won't be scared by the pool man coming by. Now, if they bark 2 times to say there's somebody here, that's their job and that's fine. But they can't be a barker and keep bothering, because we have 2 families or 2 folks on one physical property that shares the outside. They don't share anything on the inside, but they share the pool and the yard. So I really have a long discussion with them. And then because I am a pet person myself, I offer things like, do you need a dog crate? because I have every size. If you're worried about your cat, has your cat ever sprayed on anything? Has it ever clawed anything? And, the more you start talking to them, I have found them to be real straightforward. Now, I'm sure sometime that'll happen, not that way, but I just ask a lot of questions. And because I'm a pet owner, I can kind of speak pet. So maybe that's why it works well.
Okay, so speaking about pets and all things shared backyard, how do you market that? How do you market a shared backyard where you might have families on both sides that have a pet? Do you make sure the pets get along? What do you do there?
So that's why I have a lot of conversations with them. So say there's a nurse in the guest suite, and the way the physical layout of the property is, it's very easy for the people in the main house to use the backyard and the guest suite to use the front yard. Now the front yard is not fenced, but it's kind of a big space. We happen to be 150 yards from an amazing rails to trails in Florida called the Wekiva Rails to Trails. And it's just at the end of our street. And most of our guests, that's one of the things that draws them here, I'm pretty sure. And they leash walk their pet there. So what I tell everybody is, when you come here, you have to start with everybody on a leash. That's the requirement. They have to start that way. And then if the folks that are in the main house, or vice versa, the folks that are in the guest suite, if all the dogs get along, fine, great. And usually, because the relationship is almost more intimate, is that I'll say, can I share your number with the girl coming into the guest suite? Or I'll ask the guest suite girl, can I share your number with the folks in the main house, so you guys can connect and say, hey, can I let the dogs run out tonight in the backyard? And they're just more, we set the standard from the very beginning to be kind, cooperative, and nice folks to each other. And that has really worked. Matter of fact, to tell you how good it works, the current guest I have in the main house and the guest I have coming tomorrow morning to this guest suite are my second year snowbirders, both who happen to have blind chihuahuas. Now we have a pool, and the first time they came, I was out here meeting them, and the dog tried to walk into the pool 3 times. I'm like, this is not going to work. So we happened to have some fencing. So we threw a quick fence up around the pool, because they're not swimmers. They don't care about the pool at all. So I said, listen, this makes me feel better. But then I'm like, what am I going to do when people come in the guest suite? They come 3 days later, they have a blind chihuahua. I'm like, you are kidding me. So, and now they like each other so much. This is their second year of coming back, and they matched their dates almost. And the fence is back up.
Oh my gosh.
Chihuahuas. So I really do believe it's just a lot of engagement and being real frank and telling, like, if somebody says, well, my dog can get a little bit aggressive, listen, that's not a good match for us. You do not want to make plans to stay here and then it fail. We all want it to work. So that's not going to work.
That's excellent advice. And I don't even think Chihuahuas normally like other dogs. So that's so cool that they're both blind and they both liked each other. How fun. I'm going to go ahead and add, keeping that conversation going about if your market is saturated and you want to stand out. She said some key things right now. One, she recognizes that there's a trail close by that is extremely marketable and draws a lot of people to her area. So you can put it in your description, but even better, add pictures, because how many of us look through pictures and never read the description unless we like the pictures first? Right. So market your pictures in the same way that you're going to advertise those extra amenities in your description as well. And then pool, of course, is always something to market well. And the fact that you're dog friendly, I just love that, it's okay to say no, like what you were saying. It's okay to make sure it's a good fit, especially in a shared space like that. So that's excellent advice.
Right.
I think the other thing is to make sure that you have the confidence in your property, the way you furnished it, the way you market it, the way you either bought it or arbitraged it, that if it is not the right fit for a tenant, you know that you can say no, because you know there will be another one coming, right? Even if it means that you're vacant for a week or two. The midterm is you have to be a little bit more patient. Not everything happens overnight, but there is validity to that, to just knowing and having confidence in your property and waiting for the fit that is the right one. Don't force it.
Right. I agree.
Okay. So everybody, Teresa has a background in insurance, not necessarily liability and liability. And so I wanted to give her the floor. She has a unique perspective on why insurance is so important and how you can ask the right questions to make sure that your property and your tenants are well covered, especially with features like a pool, etc. So why don't you go ahead and share with us, Teresa, your process?
So when I first started short-term rental, this property in particular, which is a shared property, has so much more liability than a one single rental. On top of the fact that there's a pool, we have children because the big 3-2 house has a bunk room. It's definitely a family place. And then we have an acre yard welcoming dogs. So the liability is just layers of it. First insurance I bought, I knew it was not enough because when you're doing the application to any insurance, if they're not asking you the questions that you're afraid they're going to ask, it's not the right policy. You already know that. No. They asked bunk beds, trampolines, pools, bicycles, joint property. They asked the very questions that make me know they understand all the risks that I need to be protected against, as well as my guests. That's another comment about the licensure. They ask, are you fully in compliance with all of your county, city, state regs? Yep, and here's how. So that's another reason why it matters, because the insurance company wants to know that you're playing by the rules for them to insure you. So I went through multiple companies over that first 3 or 4 years, and then I found a company called Proper. And I'm not advertising for them. I'm just telling you that's who I finally found.
It's okay if you are.
Yeah, that actually asked me the right questions. Now, they are expensive. And in Florida, it's even more complicated because if you change insurance during hurricane season, which is about 5 months now, you can't get the property owner can't get an active insurance coverage of any damage from a hurricane until there's no storms swirling out in the Atlantic or the Pacific or wherever they're planning on coming up from Africa. So it's a timing problem. So in Florida, you got to be really careful with that. So I found Proper really answered all my questions, like the pool, like the fact that I don't keep a fence around the pool. There's a fence around the property, which is the requirement by the county, but there's no fence around the pool. And the reason why is you're more at risk if you put something that's supposed to protect them and that thing wasn't maintained. Meaning, if the guests in the main house have 2 young teenage boys and they leave the gate open to the pool fence, and then the guest in the other side, their family member goes in the pool because the gate wasn't closed and drowns. If you want to look at that, pull up any hotel. That's why they're so obsessed about those gates closing, because the hotel can't control what the guests do. Well, I'm kind of in those shoes. So when I found out from the insurance company that if I had no fence around the pool, that takes away the impression of security, meaning the fence is around the yard, pool's not fenced. And I have them sign a waiver, specifically every guest before they get here, for 2 things, house rules and the waiver about liability. And I even, funny, sort of in my interview with them, I asked them, is anybody coming who can't swim? And if they say yes, I said, okay, I'm going to send you 3 companies that provide swim teaching classes. Either they'll come here to my pool or you can go to the Y, because I want to make sure that they know I want you to be protected. I want you to know how to swim and your family know how to swim and you to be safe. But it's an open pool. And that is an insurance issue that is a problem, because if you just buy renter's insurance, you kind of think you're covered. You're just not, because renter's insurance, as a general rule, is long-term tenants, very different liability. So that was what I went through. It took me a long time to get, and I spend a lot of money on it, and I sleep well because of it.
I'm going to add to that because one of our properties is in Florida, and we just got it this past June. So we were hit with quite the first year. With Hurricane Ian, right in Cape Coral. So we got hit real good. But I always hear people talking about your core team, right? You want your cleaners, you want your property management, you want your realtor, you want your lender, right? Very few people talk about your insurance agent or broker or company. And of my entire experience in Florida thus far, and Kelly and I are going to do episodes at some point talking about our experiences as landlords, but so I'll keep it quick here. But one of my biggest lessons was it was really, really great to be able to call up in the middle of the hurricane my agent
Right.
who knew my policy, my house, the local, all the laws with everything. And he was able to tell me, you're covered here, you're covered here. We need to worry about this. We don't need to worry about this. I could talk directly to him, and he was so knowledgeable
Yep.
about that area and what I had to. And you're right, like Florida has all these weird quirks that me as a Coloradoan, I'm like, that's crazy, but whatever you say. Right. So just having that person on your team, like, I'm sorry, he is like the top. Especially if you're in an area like Florida that does have a lot more natural disasters. Now, some of our other properties are in areas where it's a lot less risky as far as the natural disaster area.
Right.
So I feel like we just go through a company, but you're right. You want to make sure that they ask all of those questions.
And y'all touched on an important part of, especially in Florida, and you're saying, one, everyone's getting hit at the same time, so that might take time. And then two, you're saying they won't cover it until basically hurricane season's over. So you want to make sure that loss of income is covered as well, so that you're still making money on the property, even though it's not available for rent during that time period. So that's a good question to make sure and ask as well.
Yeah, that was the final straw that made me willing to pay the more premium, because not any other insurance company that I spoke to about short-term rental provided much in the way of lost income. They kind of dabbled in it. They did not actually cover it. And if I had lost, let's say a tree fell in the center of this big long ranch house, right in the center, messed up both units. In the middle of Florida, hurricane, with everybody else having it, if I could get that thing up and running in 9 months, that'd be a miracle. So that was why I'm willing to pay the extra per year of premium, because if it happens, we will be shut down financially for a very long time, no matter what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to add to this section is, y'all may not know, as Furnished Finder landlords, if you use the KeyCheck business tools that Furnished Finder recommends, and is our sister company, and you go through the payment process to set up payments for your tenants and have it emailed to them, just, reminders of, hey, it's time to pay. Hey, it's time to pay. It's a nice payment system, but it also encourages landlords and tenants to provide insurance as well. So it reminds the landlord of, hey, do you want to ask your renters for insurance? And the process reminds tenants, hey, insurance is important. Here's someone that you could use. We're not recommending any specific company, but here's a company you could use, so that it gets that renter thinking about the importance of having that insurance in place. Now, I know that some things that can be a little frustrating about the renter insurance process would be things like, well, what keeps them from canceling a month after they sign up? Or how do I, ask them for verification without sounding like I'm, being too overbearing? So one thing that you can do to set yourself apart is renter's insurance is actually really pretty cheap, depending on what your needs are. And I'm not talking about the insurance for the home. I'm referring to the insurance for your travelers, since they're not coming with much typically. I think our coverage is like $100,000 in property liability, and then $5,000 in property liability, and then $100,000 in risk. If something happens, their dog bites a neighbor or something like that. So we're talking about those ways that you can set yourself apart in your market. And that's something that you could do. You could say, hey, I'm a type of landlord that I go above and beyond. I include all the utilities, take care of your lawn care. I include renter's insurance, so that all you have to do is show up, enjoy the town, and make sure and take care of the home well. So just an idea for everyone out there.
I have a question, Kelly. Do you know if the renter's policy covers if they lose the place to stay? So the tree, they they're going to stay with me for 90 days. The tree falls in and they need to go someplace else. Do you know if it covers that? I haven't asked that question.
I do not. I'm pretty trusting. So we've got an insurance agent and we just trust whatever he says is best. I like your style of asking questions. I haven't done that in the past, but so far, he seems very reliable and sets us up with, the best insurance that we need for what we're telling him we're doing. So yeah, that's a good question. We should ask that.
My mind is we lost power for 5 days, which is pretty unusual. We're in Central Florida. We're not down in South Florida, so we don't typically lose it for very often. And the guests I had were wonderful and they managed. But I thought about that if they had renter's insurance, would that then pay for them to get a place somewhere else when we have no power? We can't make the power come on. We have no way. So I guess that's something now I'll check out because I don't actually know now.
These are just all the questions that Florida brings.
Yeah. And other states. It's not just Florida.
And I'm telling you, man, the things that I have learned from having the rental in Florida for 7 months now, are things I would never have imagined. Florida is just this special little place.
Special.
Texas is up on the list as well. We of course have Tornado Alley in the middle of our country. So it's definitely a lot of states. But this has been a fun topic. So now you've got a list of questions that you can ask your insurance agent and say, hey, what can you tell me about my insurance coverage for this? So that's so fun. Let's move on to our last part of what we call landlord logistics, which is some fun facts, 5 decor and home functionality tips that Teresa has for us today. And Teresa, don't worry, I'll prompt you through them so that you don't have to remember what they were from our intro call.
Good.
But one of them is it's staggering and encouraging how many remote workers we have now. I think it's somewhere around 25% of the working population is now involved in working from home, so they can travel while they work. Right. And one of the things that Teresa does to set herself apart, not being necessarily tech savvy, is communicating about high-speed internet well. And you want to give them your tip on what you do to show them how good the internet is?
Gosh, was it the speed test? What did I talk about? Now I have to remember.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because the other reason why I like remote workers, and now because remote workers can also have online school kids. So they're not held down to what they used to be held down to. So they can be a husband and wife who are both remote workers and 3 kids who are all in remote schools, which means they've got to have really good Wi-Fi. And I tell them it's important to have what you need because one's working in one side of the house, another's working on the other side, and there's 2 kids in bedrooms all on their equipment. So we show them how to do the speed test, and I walk around and show them the speed test so they know that the Wi-Fi here is wicked fast. And I always tell everybody, if it ever goes slow for any reason, let me know because it should not. I pay a little extra. It's not even that much for the highest one I can get. And I want that to be a draw because if you're a guest and you say, well, I really want to go travel with my son or my wife or my sister or whatever, but we both need to work remotely, then I want to make sure that that's not a barrier to them coming to our place.
Exactly. So you can just take a screenshot is what Teresa was saying she does. She takes a screenshot of the speedtest.net and sends it over to interested parties. Or you could even go one step further. If you know that it's excellent internet that you're providing, go ahead and take that screenshot and put it on your listing. So like what we've been saying, pictures are worth 1,000 words. And if they see, wow, that's really good internet, that might move your property up over another person's property.
That's a great idea.
I will add to that. Yeah, and I'll add to that. And I hope I'm not spilling the beans on something you're going to say later, Teresa, but adding a workstation. One of our rentals is even a little studio apartment. There's not even a bedroom. It's just a studio. And we still put a little tiny desk and a little tiny desk chair and a little tiny desk lamp because everyone needs a little space where they can get in the zone and focus and do what they need to do, even if they are a nurse or, even if they're not working on the computer all day, you need a space.
Yep.
Yeah,
For sure.
excellent. And if for tiny spaces that you don't think you have room for a desk, I've stayed at Airbnbs where it's just one of those pop-up desks. You just there's a bar stool type chair that pushes in nice and tight, and then it just pops up. And you could also.
I want to show you how we handled ours. So,
okay,
can you still see me? Let's see. So
it's
that
dark.
is a corner desk. Can you see that?
I see it. Yes.
Okay. It just fit perfect in that corner. And we're in a guest suite, so there's no bedroom here. And I just found it, and it fit perfect. And it's been just a perfect little simple desk, but it fit the spot because it had to have the right area that wouldn't take up too much room for the folks to have space that they need, but they have a desk all the time.
Exactly. Yep.
Love it.
So these are such great tips.
How about tips for bed bug prevention?
Okay. So again, I'll bring up my little sister. My sister's a nurse. She's worked in every possible field in nursing. Not afraid of any infection, not afraid of broken bones, amputations. None of that scares her. Tell her there's a bed bug and she'll run like a scalded dog. It's very funny. But anyway.
Won't we all?
Can't blame her.
Oh, yeah. So, okay. First thing is I really believe that you're going to get a bed bug sometime in your experience.
I don't want one.
I had it happen to me the strangest time of my life. I was sitting in a bank one day at the chair talking to the banker, and I'm watching this bug, and it's Florida, so we're bug city. I'm watching a bug walk.
I was going to say, this seems like a Florida issue.
Yeah. I'm watching a bug walk across his desk, and I went, I've never really seen one. I mean, I've seen pictures, but I went, I think that's a bed bug. So I took it with a napkin and squished it and put it in my purse because I wanted to, first of all, know was I really right about it. But then, but more than that, I'm like, okay, so no matter how good your guests are or you are or your cleaners are, I was in a bank, sitting in a bank chair. He could have jumped on my leg or whatever. So what I use is they are basically little plastic light things. They're called Flea traps. And they have a little tiny 5-watt bulb and a sticky pad. And then there's a little top that sits on top of it. And you just plug it in. The reason why it works really well is it's a very gentle nightlight. So I put it under the very center of the bed. So they have 5 watts. It's barely visual. But it's warm enough bulbs. And you can't use the new LEDs. You got to use the hot bulbs because their bugs are drawn to the heat. And then it's a sticky. So every time the cleaners come, they pull it out and look. Is there a cockroach in there? Is there a spider? Is there a flea? Is there a bed bug? We get every single time. And if there's a bug there, they're going to be in there. And if I see a bed bug, holy mackerel, I'm going to go bananas and tear the place apart. I've never had one, not in either property. And I keep one of those lights under every bed. Now, some guests do ask me if they can turn off the light because they like a pitch black room. And I'm like, okay, you're okay. But other than that, it's been wonderful. And they're very inexpensive. They're, I don't know, 6 of them for Amazon are like $20. Then you get the little sticky pads and you change them out. I find it a big relief to me. Florida is a buggy place. And no matter what, we will have ants in this, no matter what we do, we will have ants. So the ants walk across, they get stuck on the sticky pad. I don't really love chemicals because I've got children and dogs in our houses. I don't really want to use chemicals if I don't have to. So this way I don't have to.
And then you also take that next step and do total encasements.
Absolutely.
For your mattresses and guys, for your box springs. Don't forget about your box springs too. So
and
Teresa has an excellent.
Every pillow.
Yep. Teresa has actually tested and approved one of those encasements because that's what I wonder. It's like, it says that it's waterproof. Is it really waterproof? Well, Teresa has tested that and it is. So you want to tell them your story about that?
By accident, actually it was very recent. So there was a family here and they had 2 toddlers in the main house. And toddlers often have bathroom issues in the bed, and that's just a reality. It's okay. Well, they had a lot of issues apparently because I took off the top and it's yellow. I mean, that bed bug protector is yellow. And I'm like, I just bought a brand new Dream Cloud King mattress. Oh my God, it's got to be ruined. Take it off. Nothing, not a drop, not a cent, nothing. And then I spent now I keep extras of everything. And on many beds where I think there can be children sleeping, I put double because they're $60. Got it. I got their $60. I put two, one this way, one that way. So that way
Wait,
there is no way.
You put two encasements or you put one encasement and then a cover on top?
Two encasements plus the mattress pad.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
Because first of all, if I'm in a hurry for a turnover, I can take one off, and then put the bed back together. But the other reason is if a kid pees in a bed, it's just a reality of children. I've had children, they pee in bed plenty. So I just want to make it easy for everybody. I also put in the closet for the family spaces, I put big kid pee pads so they can put them underneath their kid if they want to. That's just their own choice. But so I've used double. So it's a lot of money for an initial investment. But and I don't buy the cheap ones. Nope, not at all, because I want to protect my mattresses. So that's what I do. Mm-hmm. And I sent
Kelly. Mattresses are one of the most expensive furnishings you get too, because no one wants to sleep on a crappy mattress. So if you're going to succeed, you have to invest in a decent mattress, and they're not cheap, and they're a big investment, and you want it to last.
Right.
I have to put my insert about this conversation, and it's been a long time since we've talked about it on this show, but just because, depending on what city you're in, especially for larger cities, and what your city regulations are. So in my area, Goodwill won't take mattresses. Mm-hmm. So there are constantly mattresses, high quality mattresses on Facebook Marketplace or wherever you go to look for things for sale. I go to Facebook Marketplace or Nextdoor. Yep. And so, guys, you can get very high quality mattresses, basically brand new, no stains whatsoever. For I'd never spent over $100, and a lot of times they're free because they don't want to have to figure out how to get rid of that mattress or pay someone to come pick it up. Especially those mattresses that are still in really good condition, don't have any stains, and they just decided, you know what, I want to upgrade to something different, which I don't know about y'all, but my parents do that all the time. They're like, nope, trying this one now. Purple, that's the new bed, the purple. We're going to go to the purple. Oh, now it's therapeutic. I'm going to therapeutic. People do that all the time. So
now I want to put a disclosure there for you on your behalf, because you are the type of person that does your homework.
Yes.
And you're going to go see this. I know you well enough to know that you're going to go see this mattress, and if it has any type of a stain or a smell or a look, you're going to be hard pass. So that's the asterisk.
Well, and example,
we're not telling you to go find a mattress on the side of the road.
No. In a reliable home, in a reliable neighborhood.
Yes.
And we're going to circle back to that sketchy conversation, bed bugs. Bed bugs, you can see them. So it's like you're looking at the mattress intently, etc. But for your cleaners and to kind of protect that deposit, another tip for the bed bugs is I had one of my cleaners tell me, you want to check the head of the mattress. So undo that encasement, kind of take a peek in there. If you see any little dark blood type spots, that's what
you guys.
That's how
I'm gonna
know.
Puke.
Hey, these are real conversations we have to have.
These are good conversations, but listen, this is all the bugs I can handle. I'm moving us along.
Okay, no more bugs.
Got it.
No more bugs. How about keeping your linens bright, because no one wants dingy sheets?
So what I do, first of all, is I stay away from white sheets. I know it's the thing that everybody loves. I don't love them at all. One is because I like my places to have lots of color, and I think white sheets are boring. Now, there's a perception that people say, well, if the sheets are white, people believe they're really clean. Maybe, but I'll tell you what makes people believe sheets are clean is how they smell. The minute you get into a bed, how sheets smell is what makes you feel that they're clean. So I tend to buy most of my sheets. I often get them at Costco's, the Costco ones. And then I sometimes, Florida's kind of unique because we have endless estate sales because everyone elderly is moving out of big homes. So we have
everyone moves to Florida to die.
Well, it's they call it God's waiting room. But anyway, so I tend to buy really high quality linen sheets that have a lot of like body to them. and I just stay away from white. I've never felt that, and I've never had anybody tell me they didn't like the white sheets. Because my people are long-term guests, I leave them 2 or 3 full sets, one that's on the bed and then 2 in the closet. And if there's one that they like better than the other, they can choose to, when they change out their sheets, they can put whichever one they like the best. One is kind of more like the silky kind, and then one's a little bit more of like a linen feel, and then whatever they like. But I find for my group that the aggravation of trying to keep them white is a lot of work. So for example, when the urine was on the bed bug bag, the cover, it took me a long time to get the stains out between, I don't know if you guys use it all, but baking soda, white vinegar, automatic dishwasher detergent. There's about 40 things you can use to get something white. Just don't dry it. Wash it. If it's yellow, wash it again. Don't ever let it get dry. Just keep washing it, and whatever next thing you want to try. Dawn is a miracle. Just keep, and eventually I got and I sent Kelly the pictures to show her how bad it was, and they're white, completely white. But I probably awesome. Washed it 6 times.
That's good. Well, you took care of it. That's great. So we have some really great things to talk about in the Furnished Finder and KeyCheck favorites section. So I want you to answer this last question in our home and home tips, but I need it to be a little quick so we can dive into that Furnished Finder section. So you noted, and I think this is important, that you choose durable furniture that shows your style so that you attract a certain type of traveler as well. So tell us about that.
So the main house is basically farmhouse feel, except not new age industrial farmhouse feel. Decorations are so easy to come by. Incredibly inexpensive, well-made furniture that is going for sale at Facebook, Marketplace, next door, everywhere. And I'm talking about furniture that I've had here for the entire time, and not one broken leg, not one cracked piece. I'm not a fan of IKEA. I'm not a fan of the furniture that falls apart a year later. I don't want to deal with that. So I realized after a while that the decorations themselves actually draw the personalities you're looking for. If you do a lot of industrial, really white and gray and European look, they may not be the country family that I want. So my decorations are pretty country, and they're often antiques that I got for $10 for an amazing dresser that you can't break it if you jump on it, because they were built 40 years ago. So that was kind of accidental, and it's turned out to be a very good decision. That's also the draw of who wants to stay in a place that has chickens all over for decoration. That's my people.
Yep.
So it sounds like cool. Kelly and I are taking a massive road trip to Florida, with a U-Haul to do some estate sale shopping.
Come on. February is the month.
I got plenty right here.
Yeah, February
is the month.
Yeah, February is nice and cool, which we don't normally have. So
interesting. All right.
So we're going to move on to Furnished Finder favorites, but we always put the link to the landlord's profile that we are interviewing in the show notes on YouTube, and I've started adding them on the audio version as well. So go to the show notes, and I want you to go look at Teresa's fence. She has taken tapestries and made a very cool fence with a bunch of famous people's faces on it. I'm going to leave it at that. We're not going to talk about it. Just go pull up her listing so you can see it. All right. Furnished Finder and KeyCheck favorites. So Teresa has had a unique journey in marketing her property. She's been with us on Furnished Finder for 4 to 5 years, but she started somewhere else and now is loving Furnished Finder. And she also has mainly 2 places that she advertises, Furnished Finder and one other. So I'm going to let her just kind of tell you her marketing story from the beginning to the end. Not too long, just a little bit of her journey there.
So when the things started looking rough, COVID, I was knowing that something was going to happen. I didn't know what. So I started looking I knew there was something called corporate housing, but I didn't know exactly how that worked. And I knew there was some other things. And then I realized there's different labels, but it's either called ALE, which is alternative living environment, or loss of use. And in Florida, we are the queen of that issue. So if someone in my neighborhood was to have a tree fall in their house, they're not going to be able to live in that house for a very long time, not a couple weeks, not a couple months, many months. Their insurance company hires kind of like almost like headhunters to find the property. They usually find me through Furnished Finders, and they call me all the time. They say, I got a family of 4, a family of 7, and especially because I have a big property with a pool, dog friendly and kid friendly. We are really, that's often. And it's great because the contract is typically actually with the insurance company, State Farm or whoever. And it's a kind of a combination lease between the guests being in the house, but State Farm paying us. And it's probably the highest rate. It's real close to short-term rental rate. It's a very high rate because think about it, that State Farm would have to pay 4 hotel rooms for that family per night. And that's miserable for everybody. So the rate is wonderful. And they are phenomenal guests because they're in my neighborhood. So they don't have to go, kids don't have to take a different bus or go far away to a different school. So I am now regularly send out, there's 5 or 6 vendors that I shared with Kelly. They're different headhunters for properties that they're looking for your property in your city because they're trying to fill the need for an insurance company claim of someone who needs to go move out. The other groups are under construction and closing delays. So that's the other thing. So I reach out to realtors often when real close to my house. I basically draw a 2-mile circle and I send old-fashioned faxes with basically the picture of my beautiful peacock because it gets everyone's attention. And then the other house, a picture of some chickens because it gets their attention. And then I just say temporary housing for your people who can't close or the closing got delayed or the construction got delayed. Those have been a big part of my success, and it's very much referral based because once you make one of those headhunters happy one time, your name and your property gets put to the top of their pile. And if they've got somebody in that city that needs your place, they're calling you first.
Yeah. So that's that's the 2 spots that she advertises, mainly Furnished Finder. And then because of Furnished Finder's tenant leads and direct messaging, and quick reminder, Furnished Finder is a lead generation platform, not a booking platform. So you can take those leads that come in under your tenant leads, matched and unmatched housing, and you can build your business with that as well. So it is totally fine just to let the renters come to you and reach out to those tenant leads as they happen. But if you want to take it to the next level, then take those Furnished Finder tenant leads, connect with them, whether it's a good fit for your property then or not, and then start that relationship. And all of that is building your book of business from those Furnished Finder leads.
And the unmatched, don't ignore the unmatched leads. I can't tell you how many times it'll say they needed 8 bedrooms. I'm like, 8 bedrooms? Wow. They just clicked the wrong number and they didn't realize it. Or it will say that their budget needs to be $500 a month. They just clicked the wrong thing. So I contact every single lead, matched or unmatched. And I say, is there anything I could do that will make you, is our property completely not workable for you? Or might it be? Probably a third or more just clicked the wrong thing and they didn't know what they did. They didn't even realize that they clicked 8 bedrooms. So I contact every one of them. I also do it because it's an opportunity for me to send them my links to both my properties. And I say, just keep them. Next time you come to Florida, you know how to find me. It's just easy marketing. It's easy. There's not a lot of work to it. It takes me 2 minutes. And plenty of times, unmatched leads became guests.
And just an additional reminder to everyone that fits in really well here, just like Kelly said, Furnished Finder is a marketplace. It's a connection place, but it does not happen if you are not active on it. This is not Airbnb or VRBO where you put your site up, or I'm sorry, your property up, and you wait for your inbox to ding with you've been booked, you've been booked, you've been booked. If you sit back and wait, you will be highly disappointed because this is a spot where you are meant to go communicate with tenants, find the right tenants for you, and then you get to move forward. And that's what KeyCheck is for, right? But it is a place for activity and communication. And part of the reason for that is because these people are not staying at your house or your property for 2 or 3 days like they might with a short-term rental where it's a volume game.
Right.
They're going to be at your property for 30 days or more. So you want to make sure that it is a fit,
Good fit.
on all the levels that are important to you. So that's why it's really important that we make those initial connections for you, provide kind of those lines of communication, and then you decide who is the right fit for you and move forward. So get on there.
Yeah.
Get on there. As a college professor once told me, he goes, the people who get far in business aren't sitting and waiting for the mail to come. They're out there creating the connections.
And as a comment to that, give them a way out, a gracious way out if it's not a good fit. For example, I don't allow any smoking on my property. None. Not weed, not cigarette, not tobacco, not vape, none. Not inside, not outside, period, end of story, non-negotiable. So I always say to them, if there's anybody in your group, in your family, in your visitors who will need to smoke, this will not be a good place for you. So please don't rent it. I'm not blaming them. I'm not telling them anything. It's just, here's my rules that I don't bend, and I don't bend on them. And even though there's an outside pool area, people say, oh, we can smoke around the outside. No, you can't. Absolutely not, because I got little kids out there and I'm not going to be breathing smoke. Sorry, not negotiable. So that's a decision I made. And because I always tell them up front, it gives them a way to say, oh, okay, well, thanks. It's not going to work for us. Fine. It's no accusation. It's no anything. It's just not going to work for us.
And that's a great transition. So I've got 2 comments and then my final question for this episode. Teresa's bringing up a great point. There's some of those if you're in a tough market and you're having a hard time getting booked, those are the things you got to look at. Do I really need to be so hardcore about the smoking policy?
Right.
What if I changed it to smoking allowed per landlord approval? And you talk to them, you say, hey, it's not okay to smoke with the door open, but if you're going outside and you're in the backyard and it works for your property setup, these are all the things you gotta look at, guys, to figure out what can I change to make my property more attractive to a variety of audiences, and that's one. So last piece of advice, guys, reminder, it's $99 to add your property to Furnished Finder. So what I do, per year. Thank you. $99 per year. It's so cheap. But what I do is I don't wait for it to be fully furnished and beautiful. I add it whenever I secure the sale. So when we're going through the purchasing process, sometimes I might even add it before we've closed, and I am just confident that it's going to close, because if something happens, you don't close on the property. Is $100 really going to matter? No, not in the terms of a real estate sale. So there's been times where I've added my property to Furnished Finder before I've even closed on the property, and I have someone moving in almost immediately after closing because I've been communicating the whole time. So I
had a signed lease before we closed on the last property, which I do not recommend.
Don't do that.
I was very on edge.
I'm glad it worked.
Thank God it worked. Knock on wood. I'm never going to do that again.
But Kelly, okay, so my last question.
I wanted everything perfect before I put it up. And when you said that helps me understand. Nope, didn't need to do that. But I'm glad you said that. That's a great tip.
Good. So the last question that I have for this episode is, continuing that theme, you can set yourself apart as a landlord by just asking for those reviews. If you scroll through Furnished Finder, it actually shocks me how many professional business owners utilizing Furnished Finder for corporate housing or have multiple properties, and they don't care about the reviews. They just keep going. And guys, it can set you apart in those moments that you need that extra push for your property and that extra level of security and someone to feel like, okay, I have that relationship. This is a trustworthy landlord. So Teresa, my final question, how do you secure those 5-star reviews every time? Because you've got them.
2 ways. One is when they come, I tell them right off the bat, look, you guys need good reviews from me and I need good reviews from you, because if you need to rent somebody else's property, they want to look at you, make sure you're a good tenant. So we need to not let ourselves forget to do this. So typically I set a reminder a month before they're leaving, roughly 4 weeks before they're leaving. And I say, hey, if you'll do mine first, it's easier for me to do yours second, because for some reason I have trouble doing theirs before mine. Maybe just me not understanding Furnished Finders, but I've tried sometimes before and I kind of struggle with it. So I just say, I have trouble with it. If you can do mine first. And by then they've been with me for 2 months. They're very happy. They're not. Now I did have a couple people say, well, we don't like to do that until you send us back our deposit. I'm like, oh, okay. Yep. I didn't think about that, but okay, that's fair. And then I kind of pester them. And I have their phone number. So I text them. I say, hey, have you had any chance to do the review on Furnished Finders? I need to review you because you guys are going to need to rent again. And if you'll put mine in, I can put mine right behind it. And the vast majority of them will do it. I also do an old-fashioned guest book in the inside the units, and that kind of helps because at some point when they're sitting around, they're reading the guest book and they see the review book people are writing. So it kind of keys them off to do it. But I kind of pester them, and I have pestered people even a couple months after they left, say, oh God, I realized I never got a review. I never gave you a review. That's terrible. I really need to do my job. So can you do a review for me? And I'll do it right now. Works most of the time.
Good, because that's sales. Sales requires follow-up. We're in the business of marketing, hospitality, and sales as landlords.
Yep.
Katie, any final questions?
No, this has been such a good talk. I love it when we get to kind of talk about such a wide variety of things and topics and tricks, and
it's good. And it's
all good stuff. All good stuff.
It's fun that even having done this as long as I have, I learned like multiple things today that I haven't done, which is phenomenal because now I'll do them,
Isn't that cool?
I will say that being supportive to the guests is the valuable. If they've got pets, I ask them, do you need a pet sitter? Here's 5 pet sitters I know. If they're coming into town as a nurse, and I'll say, okay, are you working the night shift? Because if you are, I'll put the light blocking curtains up, and I'll have my lawn man come at 3 p.m., not 9 a.m. I ask some things about them personally. One reason is because I get to know who they really are. This is before we close a deal. Then I get a little bit more comfortable and they get comfortable with me. And then also things like if they ever need help, now we live next door. Obviously that's unique. I tell them if something happens, call 911, call my cell phone next, whatever it is, anything. I don't care if it's 2:00 in the morning. Obviously I live next door and that's a little bit unique, but still I want them to feel comfortable. And especially it's a young nurse, their mama calls me and they want to rent the place. And she's terrified about her daughter traveling for the first time. And I'm like, listen, she just basically rented a family. We're right here and we will help her. We will, if her car breaks down, if she needs somebody to fix a tire or something, we'll do anything we can. And I know that's not a normal landlord job. And I'm not saying we do that all the time, but we are supportive to the people who are guests. And that has been, I'm sure it's our secret sauce. I'm sure.
Well,
I love it.
And to remind people that you can do that on all sorts of different levels.
Yeah.
Right. If you have 15 properties, you can't do that. Yeah. And that's reasonable. But you sure can leave a $5 gift card to the local coffee shop with a cute little mug and a handwritten welcome note on the counter. And you can have a text, even if it's the same text that you have gotten ready that you send to the same tenant every time, letting them know that they're in good hands, that you're here if they have any issues. Yeah. You can show your hospitality in a large range of ways. The important thing is that you show it.
Right. I have beautiful little cards printed with this peacock behind me, which, by the way, you know what this peacock is? It's a shower curtain. It's a shower curtain.
Fun.
$12 shower curtain. I had little postcards printed. And after every guest leaves, sometime a month or so later, I tell them, thank you so much for coming. Share this card with somebody that you think might want to come to Florida and visit. It's just a beautiful visual and it's not forgettable. Mm-hmm. And the cards are cheap. And I just send them out. I also give them to people when I'm in like my other profession meetings and stuff. And I'll say, hey, if you ever need a place in Longwood, it's just sales and it's constant. And if you do it all the time, you really can't not succeed. But you do have to understand it's not just, washing one time. It's wash and repeat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, we've talked about so many great tips today. I hope y'all have enjoyed this episode. Thank you, Teresa, for being with us. If you want to connect with Teresa, reminder, you can go to this episode on YouTube and leave Teresa a comment. And anytime y'all comment and ask a question to the guest, I always make sure that they know, even if it's 5 months from now, I make sure that they know they have a new question on the episode. You can also go to the show notes on YouTube to see the link to her profile on Furnished Finder and connect with her by message or phone that way. So we really appreciate you being here. We hope y'all took a lot of great takeaways from the episode today. If you're enjoying it, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe on wherever you get your typical podcasts. We appreciate y'all and look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.